And I never come across anything like that. So I spoke with Julian and I had a chance to meet him again. And I have to say, Julian and the sound agency, especially Julian, absolutely brilliant. And of course, I Googled him, as everybody does, and I discovered he was an amazing TED talker as well. So Julian's offered to do this masterclass for us. So please listen in. There's lots of work and activity to be done. And Julian, can I pass to you now?
Thank you, Eddie. That was a wonderful
Applause,
introduction.
everyone. Applause.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much. Virtual applause. You have to put some hands on these things at some stage, won't you? Um, it's wonderful to be here. I've really enjoyed exploring QUBE, I have to say. I think it's a fascinating environment, and I'm very excited about the prospect of using it in the future. So this has been a very happy coming together, really. Um, what we're going to talk about today is speaking, actually. This is the sound agency. It's been going, I started it in 2003, so almost 13 years now, in fact, over 13 years. We ask and answer the question, how does your brand sound? A lot of brands have huge visual identity, but very few of them think about how they sound. And of course, we experience the world in 5 senses, not just one. So this is a slide of some of the brands that we've worked for over the last few years. And along the way, I have learned a huge amount about sound, and it's become more and more personal, really. So the TED Talks have become more and more personal too, starting out from how sound affects human beings, but then moving very much the realm of communication. Along the way, I wrote a book. The book is called Sound Business, and it's about every aspect of using sound in business. So it's a good read if you're in business and you want to know all about sound. Available from your local bookseller. And we get covered a lot in the media, which is very interesting. I think people find sound fascinating, actually. And it tends to be proven by the amount of coverage that we get in the media, right up to things like front page of the Wall Street Journal. And I've mentioned TED a couple of times. I've had the honor of speaking on the TED stage 5 times now. They're all on TED.com. So there's about 2,000 talks on TED.com. If you haven't come across it, do go there. It's all free. It's amazing. Talks on every subject, from black holes to jazz music to design to neuroscience. And my 5 have been seen now an amazing 40 million times, which is pretty daunting, I have to say. The thought that every day, like a football stadium full of people are looking at me on the internet is it kind of sends shivers up my spine sometimes, so I try to ignore it. But the good thing is, these talks are all about consciously listening and making sound. And I hope very much there are 40 million people out there who are doing that rather more, because that's my mission, to make the world sound more beautiful and more appropriate. Okay, well, let's move into the topic for today without further ado. I want to start on the dark side. This is stuff that's going to make you harder to listen to. Habits that we may all have, things that we may all do, which are like holes in your bucket. You know, if your bucket is holding the power of your speaking, this is the stuff that leaks it out and makes you harder to listen to. And I've isolated 7 of those, which I call, slightly tongue-in-cheek, the 7 deadly sins of speaking. So I'm going to run through those now with you, one after the other. And while I'm doing that, I'd like you to start reflecting on whether you might have any of these habits, or somebody around you might have any of these habits, and how it may affect you, because then you're going to get a chance to go off to your discussion groups and think about those things and compare notes. I want to say, I'm not saying never do these things. What I am saying is, if you do them a lot, then it makes you hard to listen to. There's a consequence. So the first one, gossip, by which I mean speaking ill of somebody who's not present. That's a good definition for gossip. So not saying nice things about people who aren't there, but just nasty, mean things. We all know gossip is quite seductive, but you know perfectly well, if somebody's gossiping, if you do listen to them, then the moment you walk away, who are they going to gossip about? It's you. So we tend to discount people who are inveterate gossips, and it isn't a particularly valuable way to spend time speaking. Actually, I think if we banned gossip on pain of some horrible the world would become a much quieter place, because we do tend to spend a lot of time gossiping, not just one-to-one, but also about the media you might consume, magazines, newspapers even. There's a huge amount of gossip in there. So gossip is something we need to become more conscious of. Second, we have condemning, judging. Of course, you need to be discerning, but you might know people in your life who are just very condemnatory. They form harsh opinions of people and dismiss them, judge them, damn them with their words all the time. That is hard to be around if it's a strong habit. Third, we have negativity. And the story I always tell about this, which is a true story, is my mother unfortunately became very negative in the last years of her life. And I remember going in to visit her in hospital and she'd hurt her hand. And I brought a paper in. I said, oh, look, it's October the 1st today. And she said, I know, isn't it dreadful? Well, if October the 1st is dreadful, what hope is there really? And people who form that kind of negative view, and I have to say, her worldview at that time was everything's dreadful. So naturally, October the 1st was too. You may know somebody in your life who is perpetually negative. Oh, look, the sun's out. Oh, it's going to rain this afternoon. We've got this good thing coming tomorrow. Probably go wrong. That kind of negativity is very wearing to be around. You almost have to leave and refresh your positivity in order to deal with it. Then the next one we have is complaining. The British national pastime, perhaps. We're very good at that in the UK. Complaining. I'm not talking about complaining where it's justified, of course. If you're in a restaurant and they bring the wrong dish or it's cold, complain by all means. And we are not great at that, actually. We're poor at appropriate complaining like that. They'll come around and say, how's your food, sir? Oh, it's fine, thanks. And then mumble and complain to the person next to you. I'm talking about inappropriate complaining. Complaining about things that we cannot affect, the government, the weather, the sport, whatever it may be. It's just viral misery, spreading misery around. Next we have excuses. We've all known this guy. Most of us have been this guy. It wasn't my fault. What could I do? This. Sometimes it's better just to say, sorry, I am putting this in place to make sure that never happens again, and let's move on. And then we have exaggeration, which can mount. We tend to be quite hyperbole centered. Our speech is littered with superlatives. Oh, I'm so excited. I often say to Americans, what do you say if there is a sunset that's amazing? Because the word awesome is now applied to a pair of trainers or a pizza, and it's been devalued to the point where there is no word to describe a magnificent sunset in America. That word has been lost. So we have to be careful about the hyperbole, about the exaggeration, about the really, reallys and verys and amazings and fantastics, because it blows our language up. And of course, it can become a habit that moves out into outright lying. I'm sure none of you have ever claimed to have read a book that you haven't read, have you? No, you wouldn't have done that. Yes, Solzhenitsyn, yeah, he's very good, isn't he? I love Shakespeare. I love all his plays, that kind of thing. So let's be careful about the hyperbole and exaggeration if it gets out of hand. And finally, we have dogma, my way or the highway. I grew up in a very dogmatic house where opinions were often confused with facts. They're not the same thing. And I think that clarity can really transform a lot of relationships. We can get very table thumping and dogmatic about our opinions. I have a suggestion for opinions, which is that they should be offered by request only. As in, would you like my opinion on that? You have to be ready for, no thanks. Oh, I had such a good opinion there, all ready to go. Nevertheless, we are prone to ramming our opinions down people's throats, giving them willy-nilly, and even confusing with facts and getting very stubborn about them. And that is pretty hard to be able to. So those are the 7 deadly sins, speaking, habits which can get a little bit out of hand. And I want to offer you also 3 words which you might consider abandoning the use of altogether, or restricting your use of, because I call them danger words. They're words that tend to affect our speaking quite badly. Here's the first. There's an accidental noise happening. Here's the first one. Should. Now, I've actually banned this word from my vocabulary altogether, because I honestly cannot think of a single useful or productive use of this word. I should lose some weight. It's just beating myself up for something I'm not doing. Either I'm going to or I'm not going to. You should get a better job. That's not nice. Or you should lose some weight. How does that feel? It can be judgmental. It tends to have overtones of condemning or judging or interfering or controlling. So a word that perhaps we could consider leaving aside. Here's another one. Just. I'm not talking about the adjectival use of this word, which is wonderful. He's a just man. I am talking about the adverbial use as a minimizer. I'll just have one. Have you ever just had one and regretted it? Or she's just a secretary, which is demeaning. And I'll give you an example of how this can actually affect the power in your speaking. So imagine I'm starting this talk now, and I start off and say, okay, welcome. I'd just like to start with some housekeeping announcements. Rewind. Okay, welcome. I'd like to start with some housekeeping announcements. Now, which one of those is more powerful? It's the second one, isn't it? Because what was I doing with the word just in the first one? I was apologizing, really. Do you mind if I just do this, just minimizing it? It's an apology, and it robs power from what you say after it. It's a very pernicious little word, and it'll probably, now I've said it, it'll probably inhabit the rest of my speaking for this talk, because it tends to do that. I have to be very careful with it. So pay attention to that one. And the final word, which I think you could usefully get out of your vocabulary, or at least reduce, is but. Has anybody ever suggested to you that you could replace the word but with the word and? You can do it almost everywhere. So for example, I like you, but are you going to listen to the next bit? It's no. The first bit has disappeared. The next bit, you know something nasty is coming, and the word but forms a roadblock. You completely forget what I said before the but. Or we're committed to customer service, but, and you know perfectly well nothing's going to happen, and the first bit was rubbish. On the other hand, replace it, I like you, and, well, that's much smoother. There isn't a roadblock, and you can listen to both pieces. Or we're committed to customer service, and, unfortunately in your case we can't do anything. It's less of a roadblock. Just try it. You can do a global find and replace in emails, and indeed in your conversation. Replace the word but with the word and. So guys, it's time to break into our discussion groups and just consider whether any of these things might be having an impact on the way that you can change the world, influence people, be powerful in your speaking. So I'll hand back to Leo, who I think is going to moderate this little move.
Yes, thank you, Julian. So you all can see below the projector screen, there's breakout A to F. That means if your first letter goes from A to F, you should click there and someone will be joining you. G to L, M to S. I'm going to ask for those in T to Z, since there are not too many, if they could join M to S instead of T to Z. So just go there, click, and this should take you to a place. Hello. Oh, hi, Steve. You're here, of course. The discussion question that Julian brought up was, so if we can all zoom in and let's try to capture some of our thoughts first and then we discuss it. So if you want to zoom into this first one, yes, on the left, just click on the yellow triangle on top of it. Good. Toby and Mustafa, if you could do the same, click on the yellow well done. Robert and Marco Bettoni. Oh, hi Marco, good to see you. If you could all zoom as well, that would be great. Julian, anything to add from what's been said?
No, I think that's excellent that people are taking on board these words have impact in their daily lives, and by becoming conscious of them, we can maybe moderate our use. Yes, thank you for the wine gone. We can maybe moderate their use, or at least become conscious. Interesting that comment on the word concern, because that, of course, is one aspect of negativity. A lot of people will talk about problems and not identify that there are solutions. So it's a very different thing. I think, wasn't it Thatcher who said, "Don't bring me problems, just bring me solutions"? Well, that's quite draconian, but nevertheless, and I just said the word but, and nevertheless, it would be probably an aspect of negativity to be obsessed with problems. Just sharing problems with people is one way of being negative. So great work, buddy.
Okay, so if we can all go back to the place called View Presentation Zoom In. Keep on. Sorry, Julian, for dragging you along.
Okay, looks like everybody's back, so welcome back for part 2. That was the dark side, that was the stuff that you could become conscious of. And I repeat, I'm not suggesting that you ban, oh yes, there's somebody talking about the word so. Let me talk about that in a moment. I'm not suggesting that you ban these things, I'm suggesting that you become conscious of them and of their effect. And that will give you so much more power in your speaking. Now, yes, whoever that was who talked about the word so, what do you do? So I'm a programmer. So means there's a logical sequence. This, so that. There's a reason the two things to be linked. And unfortunately, coming from largely the west coast of America, it's become a habit people to, what's your name? So I don't think you're John just because I asked that question. I think you were John before I asked it. And I think the word so is incredibly powerful, actually. Think about it. If you don't have a so person, when you say so, it gathers together what's gone before and produces a conclusion. So we've all agreed this, now we can move on to that. And if you don't have a so person in anything, it can be a very long meeting going round in circles for a long, long time. It's a very important word, and I'm sad to see it being so abused as it is. Yes, I do encourage you to avoid the habit of starting every sentence with the word so. Right, let's move on. We're going to talk here about an amazing thing called your vocal toolbox. You may not know you're carrying this around with you. You may not ever have had any vocal training. As I said, the voice is an instrument we all play, but we're not trained in it, are we? I mean, think about it. There are 4 ways of communicating: reading, writing, speaking, and listening. How many do we teach at school? 2. It's an absolute scandal if a child leaves school unable to read or write. And yet children, millions and millions of children, leave school every year unable to speak effectively or to listen consciously and well. Now, listening is a whole different subject. Listening is a skill, just like anything else, and it can be taught and it can be practiced and improved. Here we're talking about speaking. Some of the stuff to you in your speaking if you want to speak in power from now on. So let's have a run in the vocal toolbox and look at some of the tools that are important. This might be surprising to start, because it's not about the voice, is it? Well, yes, it is, because the way you hold your head absolutely dictates the way your voice sounds. We spend a lot of time at work leaning forward over a computer, and if you just take a moment to lean your head forward as far as you possibly can, you'll find it has an effect on your voice, like this. Or if you put your head right back again, chest as far as you can, it makes your voice go like this. So posture and movement. Posture means having your throat vertical, having your head above your shoulders. So even when you're on a telephone call at work, try to sit upright and your voice will be as good as it can be. If we're leaning forward on a screen, you're straining your voice and it will never be as effective. Also, when you're standing on a stage, it's good to stand in a kind of neutral stance, feet hip width apart, shoulders, everything stacked vertically above, and try not to move too much. Unconscious movement is very distracting if you're doing a presentation, whether it's to 3 people or 3,000. So make every movement intentional to suggest that you avoid. I've seen lots of speakers do this all the way through their talks, even TED speakers, and it is an open hand gesture. So if you're sitting listening to me now, just put your hands in front of you, turn them upwards as if you're about to receive something. And I've seen people give whole talks like this, wiggling their hands in front of them, palms up. That is a gesture called the placator, and it's a begging gesture. It means please. And it's a weak gesture. Automatically people will see that you're begging them, or you're feeling that you're trying to show them you have no weapons, you're trying to ask for something. Now, it's entirely appropriate if you're charity saying, please give generously. But if you're putting across that this year we're going to have a fantastic year with that gesture, it really undermines what you're saying. If you like having your hands in front of you and wiggling them, turn the thumbs vertical. You'll see lots of politicians, you can try this now, your hands vertical, just wave them in front of you, up and down, to emphasize points. You'll see lots of politicians talking like that. They never have their hands open for this reason. Let's move on then from that to the most important thing of all, probably, which is breath. You know, your voice is just breath. That's all it is. So breathe. It's a wonderful, wonderful antidote, breathing, for nerves. It's the fuel that makes your voice work. And if you do get a little bit nervous and you've got, you know, if you're talking to a lot of people and it's like this, a deep breath before you start will automatically calm the whole nerve thing, and you'll feel and sound much more confident. You know, we tend to breathe like birds, just to the very top of our lungs. It's rare that we really breathe deeply. So it's good to get into a practice of dynamic breathing, just a few times a day. Sort of raise your hands and breathe in so your ribs really expand. We really need to breathe into our stomach, you know, not our chests. If you ever see a baby breathing, it's only the stomach that moves, not the chest. So if you get into that, study breathing a bit, it's really worthwhile for your voice. Then we have register. Now there are actually 4 registers that we have available for our voice. The whistle register, the highest one, I don't think you'll ever be using. That's an incredibly high register. It is the kind of thing that only Mariah Carey can sing in, you know, that kind of thing. Oops, sorry. Let's go back one slide. There was a time lag there. Falsetto is the register which is one up from your regular powerful register. It sounds like this, you know, like in Monty Python. He's a very naughty boy. That is a register which is slightly comic, although I expect we may all have grandmas who speak, oh, hello dear, how are you? You know, and that's rather passive, defensive, I'm not bothering anybody register. If you want to be powerful, that's not a good place to speak from. The modal register is the one we use most of the time. It runs right from your nose right down to your chest. Now you can practice with this, and if you really want to get into it, get a vocal coach. Nevertheless, you can move your voice up to your nose, as I just have done here, or you can run it from your throat, as I am here, or you can move it right down into your chest, as I am here. And I hope you can hear the difference. This is partly cultural. It's also a choice, because we can focus on this. Now, we tend to associate depth with power. So I think if you want to speak powerfully, it's a very good idea to start resonating in your chest, as opposed to speaking up in your throat or your nose like this. There's one other register, I won't spend long on it. It's called vocal fry. It sounds like this, and unfortunately it's becoming more and more popular, you know, from American females a lot, unfortunately, and now it's moving into this country. I've heard it a lot, you know, oh yeah, we're really stoked about this. This is really cool. It doesn't sound very nice, and it doesn't do your vocal cords any good, and it is just avoiding using all the richness and power of your wonderful voice. So I would say do try to avoid vocal fry. It just sounds lazy. Okay, let's move on to timbre. We all have timbre in our voice. It's feeling words, words that you would describe touching things with, tactile words. And the words that describe voices we tend to like are pretty much the words that you would use to describe a hot chocolate. Rich, warm, smooth, sweet, dark, any of those words, comforting, you know. The words that we don't tend to like, the voices that are scratchy, grainy, squeaky, thin, cold, these are not popular. Now, if that's you, don't panic, because you can get coached. Vocal coaches can do amazing things with your timbre. And if you just Google singing coach or drama coach or voice coach, you'll find some in your local area. Try one out, try a few out, have a session, see how it goes. If you get on with them, then run a little course. Even 4 sessions would absolutely transform your voice. They'll teach you how to breathe, how to project, and how to get the absolute best out of your voice. So that's a strong tip for all of you if you want to be powerful in your speaking. A couple more to go. Pitch and pace. Now, you can indicate arousal, excitement with pitch and pace. So I can get very excited and I can speak really, really fast and about something that's really important, or I can slow right down to make a really important point. Now, of course, this again is cultural. Some cultures speak much faster than others, and we have to allow for that and recognize that. We could even adapt to that in our speaking. As I said, we tend to associate depth with authority, and just pitch alone can really make a difference. Where did you leave my keys? Where did you leave my keys? One of those is rather excited, the other one is perfectly calm. And that was just pitch. I didn't change the pace of delivery at all. That kind of leads on to my very favourite one of these, which is prosody, intonation, the sing-song of speech. You know the word monotony? It means one tone, monotone. So if I speak like this for the rest of this session, I don't think that you would find it half as interesting as when I'm actually inflecting the words. You know, it's absolutely crucial that we inflect, that we use prosody to deliver emotion and deliver meaning in what we're saying. Now again, very, very cultural. If you go to Scandinavia, for example, they tend to have an inflection which sounds a little bit bored. Yes, we're very excited about this project. On the other hand, if you go to Italy, you go, oh, amazing, hey, you know. So culturally, it is very, very varied. And we can adapt to that as well, and we can start to listen. But if you're somebody who doesn't have great inflection, I do urge you to practice exaggerated inflection when you're on your own, because you can then start to build more inflection into your talks. And I guarantee if you're inflecting well, you sound passionate. Listen to Eddie. You sound passionate, you sound excited, you sound positive, and people will listen much more closely. One little inflection, just like with the vocal fry, that I think is rather sad that's sweeping the world, is high-rising terminal, where every sentence ends as if it were a question. We're going out tonight? You know, and if you do that, you know, it's nice to see you all here. It's asking, it's actually eliding a little, is that okay? So it's a weak way of speaking. And particularly young people get into the habit of doing this every single sentence. Now, a statement really should go down at the end. That's the full stop. And a question? Well, if we ask a question, should it not go up? Yes, it should. So I think it's unfortunate because if you just have a you have a repeating inflection over and over again, it robs you of power and meaning in your speaking. Two more. Volume. Of course, I can get very loud, which probably didn't come over too well down the line, or I can whisper to make a point really importantly. Don't forget you've got huge variation available to you in volume. Try not to broadcast in public. Tends to be something we get a lot. When I go to America, for example, I can hear somebody 10 yards behind me in the street louder than I can hear the person I'm talking to. Because, hey, how are ya? You know, that kind of one volume and it's all set on maximum. Varying it, becoming conscious of it, is a wonderful way to give extra power in your speaking. And finally, space. Not in this case the final frontier. I'm talking about silence. Now, there's nothing wrong with a little bit of silence in a talk. Even if you're on stage in front of 1,000 people, you can take a few seconds to collect yourself, think about what you're going to say next. We do not have to fill it with ums, ers, and so forth. And in fact, most of us, if we're in a situation of doing a presentation that's important, we tend to go the other way and start gabbling and filling every second of the thing. That's not necessary. Try and think about silence. It's the context for all words. It's a very important sound. It's a sound that you can use well, and it's a sound that can really emphasize points. So that was part 2, and Leo is now going to ask you to go back to your groups.
Actually, I was wondering, Julian, if we could, keep going. I'm just aware of the time, and I don't know how people are on, time-wise. If you could, and I think you have still some very interesting things to share. So if you could skip this one. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Go straight on. What time do I have to finish? Remind me.
I'd say another 7 minutes. Am I asking too much?
Okay, very quickly I will go through what's left then. No, that's fine. 7 minutes is good, and then we can discuss the whole thing. Right, let's move on, and I will speed up. I won't get carried away with this stuff. Here are the 4 foundations for powerful speaking, and they spell the word hail. So this is the good stuff. We went through the dark side, we've been through your toolbox, and now I want to give you hail. Hail means to greet with acclaim or enthusiasm. It also, in this context, means 4 things. What are the 4 things? Waiting for the slide to come up. Here we are. The first is honesty, being straight and clear in what you say. Very important, and it's very nice to be around people who are just straight and clear, say what they mean what they say, and don't do anything else. The A is authenticity, being yourself, not trying to be somebody else, being authentically yourself. It's easier to do this than pretending, and it's very powerful if you stand in your truth. The I is integrity. If you are your word, if you say it and it happens, people really listen to you. And the L, surprisingly maybe, is love. I'm not talking about romantic love here. I'm talking about wishing people well. That's all. Wishing people well. And if you do that, any second. Yeah. Well, that was Steve Jobs talking. I'm going to move on because I want to be quick. And I'm about to say, if you want to be as good as this guy, and I guess a lot of you are probably here because you have to make presentations or you talk to several people at a time, then we need to think about content. So I'm going to speak for about 2 minutes on content, what you say, and then we'll talk about how to set yourself up and do the best possible job in talking, whether it's to one person or 1,000. So first of all, content. What are your intentions for you and for the people you're speaking to? We very rarely think about that before we go into something. What are the outcomes that you want? Think about that first and foremost. You might like to think about your content in terms of the people you're talking to in why, what, and how. Why should they be listening to this? What is it that you want them to get, and how are they going to put it into practice, the practical side of it? So these are steps towards delivering practicality. And you can move between these things throughout your talk. It's important to have a big idea. An editor of a newspaper will always talk to a trainee journalist who we see saying, so what? So what? So what? It's a very important question to ask yourself. So what to the people I'm talking to? Does it matter? One quite good format to use is say what you're going to say it, and then say what you said if you're giving any kind of a presentation. Let's move on to a common misconception and a bad habit, really. If you're using slides like I am, please do try and avoid these things. I mean, this is what a typical presentation looks like, and I'm sure none of you perpetrate these on people, do you? Please don't. If you read ahead, you'll see that I'm actually useless on this slide because you've already got to the bottom and I haven't said it yet. I often do presentations in places and they say, can we have your slides in advance, please, so we can disseminate them afterwards? And I say, no, I'm sorry, my slides are mainly just pictures. They won't mean anything without me talking. If you want more of this, I suggest this marvellous book. Write this down, take it away, buy it. I get no commission on this. I just think it's a terrific book. Gar Reynolds, another tester, and it's all about how to use slides absolutely brilliantly. Sorry, any noise in the background is my daughter. Now, you can practice. In order to deliver well, it's very, you don't expect to ride a bike just getting on it first time. So if you want to improve your delivery, practice at home. Make a little place where you can pretend the screen behind you is a screen, the audience are your sofa in front of you, and you're pitching or selling whatever it is you want to do, presenting whatever it is that you want to present. Get a coach. World champions are world champions with coaches. The best in the world have a coach. Why not us? Now, it might just be a friend. You can have a buddy relationship where you sit and watch each other and give feedback. Or it might be somebody who's actually a speaking coach. Moving on. Way to go is to record yourself. Get a little digital recorder. You can get one for 50 quid. You can get an app on a phone for a couple of quid and record yourself speaking. We hear our voice largely through bone conduction. So when you record yourself, yes, that is how you really sound to other people. And you can then work on that in the real. Rehearse. When you know what you're going to say, rehearse it until you bleed. My very first TED talk, it was only 7 minutes long, I think. My daughter knew it back to back because she saw it about 30 times before I went to TED, because I did not want to have the fear of forgetting my material in the middle of it. I wanted to know exactly what I was doing so that I could have fun and enjoy actually living in it and presenting it as well as possible. So rehearse until you bleed. Check the venue. I've been in this room probably 5 times, I don't know, something like that, to make sure I know how to run this and how the QUBE works and so forth. This is a fascinating new environment for me. Anytime I go to a big auditorium or a classroom or wherever it is, I like to get in beforehand, check it, talk to the AV people if they're there, and make sure I know everything I need to know about the venue, so there's no embarrassing glitches, things going wrong. If you haven't seen Amy Cuddy's TED Talk, it's the second most watched of all time. Simply doing this will make you feel more confident. It releases testosterone. So if you feel nervous before a talk, go into the toilet, put your arms up and really have a big stretch into a power pose, and you'll release testosterone and feel more powerful, more confident, and more solid and secure.
Can we do that now?
Absolutely, you should be all doing that. I'm hoping you're all doing that. Because we're just going to take a... Good. And we're going to take a moment now to do some vocal warm-ups. These will only take a minute. So wherever you are, it's probably worth standing up, if you can, and still listen to me. The first is to breathe and moan. So raise your arms up, breathe in, and then moan as you lower your arms. So it goes... That's it. And you may have just... bop, 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 bop. So if we could all do these things, it would be very nice, rather than me just doing them. Yeah, bop, 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 bop. Very good. And the other one we can do for our lips is what you did when you were a kid, when you were cold, which is just... That's it. Now you may find your lips coming alive. And then the tongue, a very important part of the speaking equipment. We want to go la, a very pronounced, exaggerated la from the back to the front of the mouth, going la, 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 la. Very good. And then try rolling an R. So took me months to learn how to do that. Now your tongue is alive. And the final one we're going to do is called the siren, and this is from acting. You go wee or, and the wee is as high as you can go, and the or is the lowest you can go. So we go wee or, wee or. Very good. Take those 4 away. Do them before any talk, and your voice will be warmed up and purring and ready to go. Final tips before you go on stage. If you're going on stage to give a talk, then do these things. Breathe in, so antidote to nerves. Expand your awareness. Try and look at the whole room. I always look at the whole room when I'm speaking. Stand in a strong stance. Smile. Finishing off very quickly with a few common errors that I see people doing so often. So things to avoid. Please do not, and I can't do it here because this is virtual, but I see people doing this all the time, turning around and reading their bullet points off the screen. So you're speaking to the screen, the audience sees your back. It's rude, it's not connected, and it is really not a good way to present to people. Secondly, I do suggest that you don't read writing. Don't write it all out and read off a piece of paper, a script. It's like writing, it's not speaking. Give yourself bullet points, by all means. Have them on cards, have them on slides, but I never read what I'm going to say. It just comes out naturally. It comes out naturally. Third, lack of variation, monotone delivery, monotone all the time, no change in volume, no space between the words, similar pace all the way through. It gets very tedious. Vary all the time. And finally, which I would never do, of course, is running overtime, Leo. I wouldn't do that, would I? Getting carried away and using too much time. I want to give you one last thought. It's not about you. The moment that you think it's all about you performing, you're lost. It's about the audience and what you're giving to them. You're giving a gift. Give it with generosity. It's about them, not about you. Hopefully, we've got a couple of minutes for feedback, Leo.
Well, the final slide, perhaps if you want to share the academy, the last one, just before we
Absolutely.
gather.
Okay. Well, I want to give you all a sneak peek because I'm working on speaking and about listening and about sound and about how to design healthy environments into a thing called the Communication Academy. And if you want to be on the inside track for that, all you have to do is pop by the website juliantreasure.com and just sign up with your email address. I think we give you some benefits for that. I can't remember what they are. And we'll keep you posted as the thing becomes launched. It's going to be sometime in the late spring. We haven't got an exact date yet. What we're really excited about it, and it's going to be kind of a masterclass in improving communication skills. So I do invite you very warmly to pop by juliantreasure.com and just log in and make sure that we've got your email address so we can keep you posted. And now, back to Leo.
Well done, Julian. Thank you. Perhaps before we wrap it up, nice round of applause for him. That was really good and fun, lots of learning.
Yay, brilliant.
And I would
Thank you very much.
and I would like to pass the final words to Eddie. Should we gather in circle, Eddie? Oops, sorry for not warning you that I was just about to drag you.
Great. Thank you very much, Julian. That was brilliant. I think that was more than we expected, so we're really, really pleased with that. So what I'm going to ask you to do before you disappear is 3 quick things, because I think most of you are planning to come and talk to us about using QUBE in your organizations afterwards. So first thing, if you do want to talk to us, just leave a message somewhere, either in the text chat or just drop me a message before you disappear, so we can organize the time to talk. I think probably Katie has already organized that for most of you. The second thing which I want to say is it's good to take a selfie and tweet it. So I'm going to tell you how you take a selfie, and then I'll tell you what the Twitter handles you need are. So to take a selfie, in the bottom left hand corner you'll see there's a green question mark, and next to that there's a video camera. It's not that one. Next to that there's a camera. If you click on the camera, it's sort of bottom left hand corner, question mark, video, take a snapshot, and then choose on my desktop. If anyone's struggling with that, please shout. Julian is at Julian Treasure. QUBE is at QUBE CC, and this has been a QUBE Inspire. So if you want to tweet that, that would be really great. We'd really very, very happy with that. So thank you very much about that.